Hello, this is a sample research project for Humanities 102. I'll be doing a presentation on Al Capone. This is how you should set up your presentation and how it should look. When you submit your video link, you should have your project PowerPoint in the background and a small window of you giving your presentation to go with it. Okay. First about Al Capone, he was born of an immigrant family in Brooklyn, New York in 1899. Al Capone quit school after the 6th grade and was associated with a notorious street gang, becoming accepted as a member. Johnny Torrio was a street gang leader. Among the other members was Lucky Luciano, who would later attain his own notoriety. And if you've seen that HBO hit series, it goes all into Al Capone and Johnny Torrio and Lucky Luciano. It's a great show. At about 1920, at Torrio's invitation, Capone joined his Chicago gang, where he became an influential lieutenant in their mob. The racket spawned by enactment of the Prohibition Amendment, illegal brewing of alcohol, distilling, and distribution of beer and liquor, was known as a growth industry for these street gangs. Using Al Capone as a bodyguard, Torrio used him for murder and all kinds of other things. Torrio was killed in 1925, and Capone becomes the head of Chicago's North Side Gang. Some nicknames and aliases for Al Capone are Scarface, Public Enemy #1, probably that's the most common one, Big Al, the Big Fella, King Alphonse, and Snorky. Capone's gang is associated with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on February 14th, 1929. This is when 7 members of the Bugs Moran mob gang were led to an empty building where several of Capone's gang were dressed as police, and they were led into a room and told to turn around, and basically they were machine gunned against the wall, and this is where they were found. Capone actually was in Florida during this time, so he was never actually linked directly to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but many of his men were found guilty of this. This is one of the videos that you will watch in one of the weeks and learn more about this. As public enemy #1, even though the FBI continued to investigate Capone and knew that he was guilty of many, many things, they could never pin anything straight to him, as most of the acts were committed by his gang members and not actually himself. He does appear before a grand jury in March 1929 for little petty things that they've been able to attribute to him. On May 17th, 1929, he's arrested for concealed weapons, and then on February 1931, he's found in contempt of court for not showing up for some little misdemeanor. The U.S. Treasury finally convicts him on tax evasion charges in 1931, and he's sentenced to 11 years in prison. Now, because Al Capone was not the cleanest of people, and he ran several prostitution rackets and trafficking bordellos, he was into some things that he might not have been safe with, and when he went to prison at Alcatraz, he did suffer from syphilis and gonorrhea, which they tried to treat in prison, but we know that prison's not really a safe place for people that have issues with health and, wellness. And so he continued to, that deteriorated his brain and left to some health complications at the end of his life. Some things that are attributed to Capone is his bootlegger businesses, gambling rings, prostitution, rackets, trafficking in bordellos, narcotic trafficking. He ran protection rackets, and then even murder. It's estimated that by 1929, Capone's income from the various aspects of his businesses was $60 million in legal alcohol, $25 million in gambling, 10 million in vice, and 10 million in other various rackets. Now you should remember that that's in 1929 money. So you can multiply that by about $2.14 and get 2022 money. So you're talking about a lot of money in these things. At the end of Capone's life, he was actually released from prison after serving 7 years. He did have to pay a lot of money back to the government, but he was able to do that, and they let him out in just under 7 years of serving his prison sentence. He did suffer some brain complications from the syphilis that he had. He had become very sick in prison, and when he left prison on November 16th, 1939, he went straight into the Baltimore Hospital for patient care. He was released, but at that time they did some psychiatric work on him and found that he had about the brain capacity of a 12-year-old by that time. So he was released to his family where they lived in Florida, and he ended up dying due to a stroke and pneumonia on January 25th, 1947. And here are the resources that I used in this presentation. Please make sure when you list yours, you can certainly just list the full web addresses for each of those. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. If you have any questions about yours or how yours should look, please let me know.